from the Opus Radio News Center, this is an Opus Radio News Update.
BP Money is coming to Central Louisiana. I'm Al Quartemont with a look at your local news, state news, and sports here on our web update. Rapides Parish getting $97,000 through the Louisiana Tourism Recovery Program. It's funded by BP. The money has been designated to help the state offset negative perceptions following last year's oil spill in the Gulf. The Rapides Parish Police Jury delegated authority over that money to the Alexandria-Pineville Area Convention and Visitors Bureau. They will use it mainly for marketing purposes. Their plan on just how they'll use the money has to be sent to the Lieutenant Governor's office by February 21st. Speaking of BP, more frustration with the company and the federal government. President Obama promised last June victims of the BP oil spill would be compensated quickly and fairly. But the process to do so, to likely no one's surprise, has been beset by red tape and questions about its fairness and openness. The Associated Press has interviewed legal experts, government officials, and more than 300 Gulf Coast residents, hearing numerous complaints, many of them about Kenneth Feinberg. He's the man that was picked by the president to administer the $20 billion compensation fund. Now the dissatisfaction has reached a fever pitch, and lawmakers in Washington are demanding the White House step in. Governor Jindal and others want a federal judge to intervene. Many of the people most affected by the disaster are threatening to go to the courts. A coalition of Louisiana business leaders is pushing a list of budget changes that includes increased fees on hospital services, higher tuition rates for students, and a reduction in the state workforce by nearly 9,500. Blueprint Louisiana Monday outlined its 14 recommendations for the upcoming fiscal year that begins July 1st. The state faces a $1.6 billion budget shortfall for the 2011 fiscal year, but Governor Jindal and lawmakers are considering cuts and revenue measures to close that gap. Another new report says Louisiana spends too much on college tuition through the TOPS program for students whom they say can't afford college, and it shortchanges those who cannot. The left-leaning policy group, Louisiana Budget Project, recommends strengthening the academic requirements for TOPS and capping the program. The $139 million per year program pays full tuition at state schools for any Louisiana resident, regardless of income, who has a 2.5 high school grade point average and scores of 20 or above on the ACT. The report says Louisiana standards are lower than similar programs in other states and have resulted in millions of tax dollars subsidizing mediocre students from wealthy families who would pay for their children's education if TOPS were not available. Change in the building that houses Louisiana College's Paul Pressler School of Law up in Shreveport. LC announcing in an agreement to renovate and purchase the former Joe D. Wagner Federal Building in downtown Shreveport. When LC announced it would house the law school up in Shreveport back in September, it originally had picked the United Mercantile Building, but that facility apparently proved to be a little too small. The Wagner Building, which also served at one time as a federal courthouse, will need an 8-month asbestos abatement process and then full renovation. And Valentine's Day might be over, but the romance will continue up in Natchitoches. That's where the National Trust for Historic Preservation has named the city's historic district as one of the top 5 most romantic main streets in the United States. The other 4 most romantic main streets include Middletown, Connecticut, Madison, Indiana, Franklin, Tennessee, and Paducah, Kentucky. And in Tuesday sports, right now the Hornets will take any victory they can get. 7 losses in 9 games, dropping them to 5th overall in the Western Conference. They'll be at Golden State coming up tonight. Also, LC's Jelani Mitchell with a career-high 37 points, leading the Wildcats to a big 86-77 win over the University of the Ozarks in a makeup game yesterday. The LC women also winning their 10th straight game with an 81-56 win over the Ozarks. Sophomore Natasha Gottlieb was the offensive star with a game-high 26 points. We'll keep more news on our Truth 104.3 FM Facebook page posted for you throughout the day. You can always send us your news. Send law news at opusbroadcasting.com. I'm Al Quartemont.